All right, welcome back to the 49er Draft Preview Show. Larry Krueger with you as we look ahead to the 2025 NFL Draft. And joining us on the UMA guest line to break it down is Ryan Fowler, who you've heard a number of times this spring on Niners Nightly from the Draft Network. And he's with us on the UMA guest line to chop it up and talk all things Niners in the upcoming draft. Ryan, thanks for jumping on.
Absolutely, Larry. Always appreciate having me on, man.
Well, it's funny. Tony Pauline, an NFL scout, revealed in a podcast last week that the 49ers, the people that he's talking to, that this decision could come down to Shamar Stewart or Walter Nolan. If that was one, what do you think of that report? And two, what do you think of those two prospects? And do you have a preference?
Yeah, I think Walter Nolan, for me, is probably a little high there. I haven't heard the same things that Tony's hearing. Respect his work, but I personally have not heard that. Now, for the Shamar Stewart stuff, yeah, I have heard that since basically November of last year, as far as he's going to be likely a top 12 lock in this class. I'm much higher than everybody else, I think, on Shamar. I know the consensus is saying, hey, he's going to go here. But there's a lot of folks out there, as you know, Larry, that don't like his ability as a football player. But for me, really turning on the tape and diving into what he was asked to do down there for the Aggies this year alongside Nick Scourton and Shamar Turner, all three names we're going to hear on draft weekend, is play 4-eye and stop the run, not pinning your ears back and flat out getting after the passer. So for me, this just the disruption is production. And there were a lot of times down there for Shamar this year where other guys were cleaning up sacks, but the hurries, the pressures, the QB hits, all that stuff, seeing him live and up close at the Senior Bowl was also an absolute treat. I think he was really the winner of the week with a couple other players that I could mention. But Shamar Stewart, if he's there, at 11, I wouldn't be mad at all if the Niners go there. And then with Walter Nolan, another guy that was, all everything type of recruit, 5-star. And seeing him at the Senior Bowl, too, was really a joy. A guy right now that I think can win in isolation right away. So he's going to make everybody around your defensive line and your front seven better by opening up gaps and allowing your edge players to win on one-on-ones with offensive tackles. So I like both players. I think Walter's a guy I probably see in that 17 to 32 type of bucket instead of top 15 as of right now. But in this class, Larry, where there really is no consensus, really away from likely Cam Ward to the Titans, it's going to be really fun to see what happens on night one, especially for a team like the Niners and John Lynch, where they have a ton of capital, especially if one of these guys they really like were to slip down some boards there in the top 10.
Let's hammer home on Stewart and Nolan for a second. One of the issues, I think, with the 49ers and some of these defensive end prospects is just that they don't want to use the 11th pick in the draft on a player who can't play on first and second down. That's a third down specialist only. So, there's been some talk about guys like Mike Green. Mike Green is 6'3", 250 pounds. There's been some talk about Donovan Ezeraku. He had great workout numbers in Indy. 6'3", about 250 pounds. James Pierce, 6'5", about 245 pounds. Can these guys stand in against big, hulking offensive tackles against the run with their hand in the dirt in a 4-man wide 9 front on first and second down? And that, I think, is the attraction of Shamar Stewart. He's a great run defender. He played at about 285. Or maybe low 280s, I should say. And he's just got that rare combination of talent and motor. You mentioned, you're the first guy that I've heard mention a reasonable reason for the lack of sack production. I think it really is multiple things. I think you had 3 guys on this line that were pretty good. So maybe they stole sacks from one another. Also, I think A&M had the reputation as a team of it's a dominant defensive line. Let's get the ball out. And then I think your point is the best point, the most salient point, which is they didn't always ask him to go hunt quarterbacks. Sometimes they asked him to just play the run almost like a defensive tackle. So it's funny. I know the rank and file Niner fan and NFL draft fan sees, the lack of sack production and immediately thinks, oh, he's just a guy that worked out great, but he's really not a good player. And as an A&M fan who watches them every week, nothing could be further from the truth. This guy plays incredibly hard and he's a hell of a player. So I don't know. How many of the defensive ends in this draft do you think actually could stand in and be 3-down defenders as opposed to third down specialists?
Yeah, it's a great question, Larry, specifically because everybody wants those sack artists, right? They want these guys that are getting 15, 16 sacks a year, the Myles Garrett, TJ Watts of the world. But the bottom line is your path to snaps as an early down player is going to come as a run defender. And I'm really glad you mentioned that because I think that the three names that you mentioned with James Pierce, Mike Green, and Donovan Ezeraku, I would say two of those guys right away, I think, can live on early downs. That's Mike Green and Ezeraku. I have concerns with James Pierce's play strength on early downs right now. Now, I love the versatility. I love the bend. I think if we sat here this time last year, Larry, and talked about the 2025 class following the 2024 draft or pre-draft, I would have said James Pierce potentially getting him in the late 20s. Man, I would call you crazy. But here we are right now where he's likely going to go past 15, 16, 17 in this draft. So I think one thing I wanted to mention also about Mike Green that I've really enjoyed in his evaluation is just the ability as a pass rusher is outstanding. The productivity, the Ohio State tape, everybody wants to make a crazy business about that, and that's fine. But his ability as a run defender is extremely underrated in this class. He's not just a slasher. He can win as a peek and pursue type of defender. He can run the fringe areas. He can chase down more athletic quarterbacks. That is something that's going to get him on the field right away. And then you bring in that ability on 3rd and 6s and beyond, the ability to win in isolation. So out of all three of those guys, I would say the earliest I would expect would be Mike Green first. Then I would say Ezeraku and Pierce are right in that parallel type of 1A, 1B in the 20 to 32 type of range.
And there's some that believe that Green and Pierce are not even on the Niner board in the first round, not necessarily because of football, but maybe off-field concerns.
Yeah.
How do you have the defensive tackles ranked? Dane Brugler has them Mason Graham 1, Derek Harmon 2, Kenneth Grant 3, Walter Nolan 4, Tyreek Williams 5. How do you have the top 5? Where do you have Nolan?
Yeah, Nolan's going to be close, really, in that 2 spot for me behind Mason Graham. I really like Walter Nolan. In today's day and age where you got to be able to guy that can live on all 3 downs. I think Walter's the guy that's also going to get stronger as he gets older. But the pass rush productivity in isolation, I think, is just going to be a nightmare to counter. Really, the twitch, the explosiveness, the hands, everything matches with him. He's got a plan as well within the interior. Whether he's a guy that's at 0, 1, or 3, he understands what he's doing flat out up front. He's really shown that since his last final years in high school, where coming out with the number 2 overall recruit, whatever he was in his class 3 years ago. So I think Walter Nolan's the 2 behind Mason Graham. I think Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon are right there for me as well. I don't know where to exactly put a guy like Darius Alexander, who I still really like from Toledo. And there's some rumblings for him in the back end of round 1, which hasn't been talked about a lot. But I know Philadelphia with the Toledo connection is absolutely something that's tangible there. But Tyreek Williams, is someone that I do really like. I turned on his tape again this week. And just as an early down run defender, his ability to throw guys to the side, that's someone that you want to free up your linebackers to come downhill and make plays. Today's day and age, the running back is coming back. People want to live in too high, or they're going to run the ball. You got to get a guy like Tyreek Williams to stop the run for you. So really, him and Shamar Turner as well can be up in that group in that 4, 5, 6 type of range.
What's your downside on Nolan? He was a 5-star coming out of high school. He went to A&M for a couple of years, transferred to Ole Miss. He has been in a number of different programs through the years, and he's walked out of practice a couple times.
Yeah.
But, to me, I see a Chris Jones. I see a guy who's a defensive tackle, but he's also athletic enough to play defensive end, and I think he could pretty much play any spot on almost anybody's defensive front. I'm all in on Nolan, and I really like him a lot. For the people, what are you hearing as far as the people that don't like him? What are the glitches? What are the downsides?
Yeah, there are some questions as far as but the love of football for Walter Nolan. I wouldn't be, I got to tell the truth, right? Be transparent on here about Walter Nolan as far as what teams are saying, and I think one thing with Walter that I love to see as far as getting to know him a little bit, specifically Senior Bowl week, is someone that I didn't see that at all. I think he's someone that's going to commit to the game. He's going to just continue to refine his craft. I mentioned the ability to get in the NFL weight room and get stronger. I think sometimes the verticality on him, he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not the longest player in the world. I think some teams would like to see a little bit more of that as far as his ability to win without just being twitchy and as far as that lateral agility and the movement skills to win to either shoulder and really half-man offensive lineman. But I think overall, he's just a really darn good football player that has that that confidence and that swagger to him, to where he's always been that guy, Larry, since high school, where he's always been that dude. So I got to come in, I got to start, and I got to make an impact for my entire defense. So I'm all on the Walter Nolan train. If he goes at 11, I wouldn't flack the 49ers for doing so, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he's there the latter half of the first round or even early on day 2.
If the Niners wait to day 2 to take a tackle, and let's just say, Graham, Nolan, Harmon, Darius Alexander, let's say maybe Alfred Collins, let's say those guys go in the first couple rounds. Niners have 2 picks in the third round. Is there a third round defensive tackle, whether it's CJ West, Omar Norman Lott, Josh Farmer, Shamar Turner, Ty Robinson? Is there somebody out there that you think, man, if they get to the third round, that should be the guy at the defensive tackle spot?
Yeah, you mentioned Josh Farmer. I talked to a couple teams that have a first round grade on him out of Florida State.
Wow.
And he's not Braden Fisk. I loved Braden coming out last year out of Florida State. And obviously had a hell of a year down there, or out there for the Rams. But I think there's so many guys, Larry, in that day 2 bucket. I know it's so loaded on day 1 with the Mason Grahams of the world, but then you get into that day 2 bucket. CJ West, I've loved since watching him at Kent State, and what he was for that Kurt Cignetti Hoosiers defensive line this year was just sensational. And I think he's someone that his best football, I still think, is down the road, even though he's a more mature prospect. He's just really scratching the surface of what he can be. But I think there's one guy I think that's being overlooked a little bit in the third round, early fourth round bucket. That's Aeneas Peebles from Virginia Tech. I cannot say enough good things about what he could be as a guy that is just so twitched up out of his mind within the interior, where he is going to be a nightmare to counter on passing down specifically. So there's guys that are better in the ground game. You mentioned Alfred Collins. We talked about Tyleik Williams. Shamar Turner's up there as well. But I think if you want a guy right away to really provide some pass rush push, they may also push him down some boards with the limited snaps. Aeneas Peebles from Virginia Tech, and I'll also throw Jamari Caldwell in there as well from Oregon.
Yeah, no, these are good ones for sure. There's another report out that the Niners may go corner in day 2, and the name that I heard was Dorian Strong from Virginia Tech, who's kind of a big-bodied press corner, pretty competitive player. What's your report say on him?
Really like Dorian Strong. It's a great name to bring up, Larry. One thing that popped off of his tape watching the Marshall game, I watched him and I said, can he run and can he play man? He checked those boxes for me on his tape this year and even last year. I think the height matches up, the length matches up. He's got good hips. He's just someone that also the effort was outstanding. There's a clip where the Marshall running back, he's probably 50, 60 yards downfield, and Dorian just kicks up into gear, and you can just see him run him down all the way across the field from the wide angle view. That type of effort from the far side of the field is going to translate. And I know that's even held some weight with some teams I've talked to here over the last few months about Dorian, even pre-Senior Bowl as well. So I really like Dorian Strong. I really do. Virginia Tech always has a lot of athletes that they get from that 757 Norfolk area down there, where it's a hotbed for athletes. So to come over there and now progress as an athlete and a football player and marry that, I think Dorian Strong will be a heck of an ad on day 2 for somebody to come in as that rotational piece, CB3, CB4 type of player.
Couple last ones for you. Edge rushers. A lot of talk about Oladejo being a 49er target on day 2. But, it sounds like he probably is going to go between where they pick in the second round and where they pick in the third round. So they're either going to have to trade back or trade up. What do you think of Oladejo? And give me a day 3 edge rusher. My kid went to Cal Poly. I've been watching this kid, Elijah Ponder from Cal Poly, and he, to me, looks super crazy athletic. I kind of like BJ Green. And I'll tell you, the 2 other guys that are really impressive to me are Aiden Huntington from Tulane and Johnny Walker. I love, first of all, great name, Johnny Walker, but Johnny Walker Jr. from Mizzou. Missouri, I love Marcus Golden back in the day, and this kid reminds me a lot of Marcus Golden, and he looked great in the All-Star game. What do you think of Oladejo, and give me a couple day 3 edges that you like?
Yeah, I cannot say enough good things about Femi Oladejo. I really can't. This is a young man similar to what the conversations that I've heard and I've even had with a guy like Will Campbell, as far as someone that's a franchise type of changer. That's Femi Oladejo. I wouldn't be shocked. We stay with the consensus and where he's going to come off the board in the second round. But I also wouldn't be shocked, as far as my connections I have with Washington, they love the kid, and they're at 29, and they need an edge rusher. They love the versatility. You look at what they did with Frankie Louvu last year. That's that similar type of player. So wouldn't be shocked if he comes off the board at 29. I cannot say enough good things about Famiola Dejo. And then a day 3 pass rusher. I love when we get into this bucket, Larry, because it's so easy, man, to talk about the top 50, top 60 guys. But these are the players that help you win the Super Bowl. They really do. It's help you build a roster. And for the 49ers perspective, where you got 11 selections and you got 4 picks inside the top 100, you're going to be able to add a lot of guys. So on day 3, I think one guy that really stands out to me is someone that I have a day 2 grade on is Q Robinson from Alabama. This is a guy that didn't transfer. He stayed down there in Tuscaloosa from the Nick Saban regime to the Kalen DeBoer regime. And you watch this kid. I don't know if there's a player in this class. It's not a Michael Williams. It's not a Shamar Stewart as far as the long arm, his ability to get his arm out and power through somebody's chest. That's 330 pounds and lift them off the ground. It is an elite A trait, which you don't see sometimes from some of these guys that are coming in on day 3, where you really take flyers on athleticism and what they could be from a projectability standpoint as a football player. So Q Robinson, if you look him up, he goes as Quandarius, but it's Q just for short. So really, really like his game as far as someone that is just uber athletic off the edge, explosive, can chase down Taylon Green, guys like from the Arkansas quarterback that can really run. Just a really good football player that's really going to make a team happy there on day 3.
2 last thoughts on the offense. Day 3 quarterback. I'm a Riley Leonard guy. And I've been watching the Gruden camp, quarterback camp. And first of all, if you're a quarterback, you should do that show because he makes all these guys look pretty good. But the guys that really stand out to me, I like Cam. I don't like Sanders. I don't like Dart. I don't like Milroe. I kind of like Kyle McCord from Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like Riley Leonard from Notre Dame quite a bit. I kind of like Cam Miller from North Dakota State a little bit. But I'll tell you, watching Seth Hennigan from Memphis with Gruden, there's no question that kid's accurate, and there's no question that kid's smart. Gruden said he thinks he has a photographic memory. Hennigan played good ball for Memphis. I also kind of like Brady Cook. Is there a day 3 quarterback that you're hot to trot on?
I do like Kyle McCord. I've always liked Max Brosmer, coming in as a guy from New Hampshire. I think is going to be a guy in that late 6th round, 7th round type of bucket. I'm glad you mentioned Cam Miller. I'm not sure exactly if he makes a position switch moving into the NFL as far as just a versatile type of player. But I think, I would say Kyle McCord is probably my favorite in that group as well. We're going to see where Tyler Shuck from Louisville comes off the board. I don't know if he goes early 2nd round. There's some conversations around that right now. He's more of that late 2nd round, 3rd round type of bucket. But I do want to bring up one name at the quarterback position that has gotten a lot of buzz recently as a guy that I don't know if he lives as a quarterback, but he may be that Taysom Hill type of versatile weapon. That is Tommy Mellott from Montana State. The Walter Payton Award winner, the FCS's version of the Heisman, 46 touchdowns this year, 6'2", over 215 pounds. Ran high 4.3s, low 4.4s at his pro day. He has had a lot of attention as far as a versatile type of player to come into an offense in a day and age where all these personnel packages are so complex and unique. So late day 3, potentially even a priority UDFA type of guy that I think will come into a roster and potentially make a 53-man because of what he can do as far as an athlete and also the success, Larry, that he's had as a quarterback.
Awesome stuff. Ryan Fowler, and the Draft Network. Ryan, thanks for jumping on our draft preview show. We really have enjoyed our conversations. After the draft in a few weeks, we'll get you back on and we'll review what the Niners did. But, man, always appreciate your time. Thanks for jumping on KNBR.
Absolutely. Thanks as always, Larry.
Ryan Fowler from the Draft Network. We got more straight ahead as the preview show continues on the Sports Leader.